Welcome to this month's installment in our series of interviews concerning priesthood in the Roman Catholic Church. I'd like to introduce our guest for this month. It's almost Deacon Patrick Ohl, soon to be Deacon. Ohl will be ordained to the Transitional Diaconate. What that is, how that involves vocation to the Roman Catholic priesthood, we will discuss. So, could I ask you, I'll call you Patrick for right now. In about an hour, I will address you as deacon. So this is right before his ordination to the Transitional Diaconate. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself before anything?
Sure. My name is Patrick.
Yes.
I was born in 1993 in Windsor, and I spent the first 16 years of my life or so there. Mm-hmm. Once the jobs left Windsor, so did we. Okay. And we landed in Kitchener. My dad had a job at the Toyota plant in Cambridge, so I finished my schooling there in Kitchener, and our family has always been very close to the church, specifically the Polish church. I was born here, the first child born here, but it was very important for them to pass on the Polish culture and also the faith. So we would go to church often as a family. We would pray together, and I've always had that kind of exposure to priests, to religious sisters. There was always a sense that these are people just like you and me. Okay. There wasn't this kind of mystical aura about it or anything. It was these were ordinary people who devoted their lives to serving God.
And that drew you.
It did.
Rather than a mystical aura, seeing ordinary people serving God.
It did. And it was coming to the church, it was serving at the church that was my first exposure really to the love of God, to God's mercy, God's acceptance, God's unconditional love of us. This isn't to say that we didn't learn it at home or anything like that, but that's where I really experienced it in a personal way. That's where the faith really became my own. It wasn't something that we were forced to do. It became something that I wanted to continue in for myself. And there was always this attraction towards the priesthood, especially the diocesan priesthood. There was always this attraction towards, this is the kind of person I want to be.
Okay. You had good pastors then.
Oh, I had the best pastors.
Okay, very good.
They were wonderful people. They gave of themselves wholeheartedly. There was always a sense that no matter what, you could always come to Father. You could always talk to him about anything, and he would listen to you. He would take you seriously. Beautiful. He'd try to give you advice. And there's one priest in particular that stands out in my mind. And by the time I got to know him, he was a little bit on the older side already. He had to be helped in and out of his chair. Oh, yes. He was starting to lose his vision, but he was always there at Mass, at daily Mass. He was always there to serve the Lord. In spite of his physical limitations. Yeah. And I remember being a young kid serving at a daily Mass and kind of noticing the sleeve had fallen a little bit and noticing that there were numbers tattooed on his arm. Oh. Now, I'm a kid at this time, so my first thought is, the priest has a tattoo. That's bad, isn't it? I should tell someone. Yeah. And that's when it was explained to me just what those numbers meant. Okay. That he went through a horrific experience in the concentration camps. As many priests did, yeah. And even while in the concentration camp, he ministered to the prisoners around him. When he was liberated eventually, he took a little bit of time for convalescence and then immediately began ministering in a camp for displaced persons. And that was very much his life, a life of service, a life of joyful service. What a wonderful model. What was his name? Monsignor Lawrence Vanook. And is he's still with us, or he's deceased? He's deceased a few years now. Okay. But he was a tremendous inspiration for me. Sounds like you knew a saint. I think so. Yeah. Well, how did you come to discern your call to the priesthood and apply for seminary? Well, I mentioned it before, but there was never really a single point in time. Okay. There wasn't a an experience of me at prayer and the angels descending and whatnot. It was always just this desire, this attraction towards the priesthood that I felt. And even in high school, when you go through a phase where, priesthood is interesting, but also girls are pretty. Even in those moments, there was always that desire for the priesthood. And that's been constant. Pretty much, I don't remember a time in my life where I wasn't at least thinking about it.
Okay, so did it come to the point where, having had this ongoing attraction from a young age, you decided, I have to look into this?
Yeah, there was a vocations director who was known by our family, and I felt comfortable approaching him. I felt comfortable kind of telling my life story. This is who I am. This is where I've come from. And he was very happy to accept me into the program of priestly formation.
And he, of course, introduced me to you many years ago when I was the pastor at St. Anthony Daniels. That would have been Father Wojtek Kuzma. And I remember hosting you and some other young men. And one other of the fellows that were over that night has also gone into studies for the priesthood, although he's in Manitoba, the other guy. So, but interesting that both of you made this decision. Yeah. I'm not saying it's because you had dinner with me that night or anything, but...
Well, it helped.
Well, I'm hoping. Anyhow, so what was seminary like?
Seminary is interesting because you walk into it expecting kind of like a perpetual retreat. Oh, it'll be great. We'll pray together and we'll all be holy together and it'll be great. And to my surprise, there I am studying philosophy, and it's a lot of reading. It's a lot of assignments. It's a lot of work. And that's really, in many ways, it does feel like a university program, but with other stuff on top of it. Time for prayer, time for reflection, holy hours, that kind of thing.
Right.
And so you are there with a group of men who share your values, who want to take this journey with you, and you're there to support each other. And as with any group of friends, there are moments where you might clash a little bit, but at the end of the day, we all know that we want to serve our Lord and to discover His will for our lives.
Right.
And that's a tremendously encouraging thing.
And then once you got into studying theology,
then
out of the philosophy into theology, then...
Well, in philosophy, I would find myself often getting frustrated. Why am I reading David Hume? I don't want to read David Hume. But it's odd. Once you make the transition into theology, all that time spent in philosophy, it suddenly clicks into place.
Right.
You get a little bit of a structure, a vocabulary for thinking about things you'll end up discussing a lot in theology. So all those moments of frustration, all those late nights writing essays, they ended up paying off in spades.
Right, yeah. We should just mention to folks watching that philosophy in this context means the search for wisdom using human reason. And the church always wants to keep up with philosophy, both ancient and also medieval and modern, in order to understand human beings. And because we use some of the terms and concepts that human philosophy have come up with to explain our theology to the world. And so it is an important thing for us to study. Now, you're at the end of your seminary journey, and hence the big event today.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about transitional diaconate? Like, how is a transitional deacon different from a permanent deacon?
Well, we actually have one extra vow in the ritual, and that is the promise of celibacy.
Right.
For permanent deacons, especially married ones, that's not one that...
Might not go over.
That's not one they take.
Right.
But it's a transitional step, really, because we know that this isn't the final goal. I haven't been in seminary for 7 years to end up as a deacon.
Right.
But that being said, the ordination to the priesthood that will take place, that's also not going to annihilate the diaconal character.
That's right.
It's going to build on it. The diaconal, the ministry of the deacon is about service. Especially, there's a really special relationship to the bishop, where we are there to help him in his ministry, and we are connected to him in a special way. And priesthood doesn't get rid of that. What it does is it goes a little bit deeper into that. And so as a deacon, I'll be able to preach on the gospel. I'll be able to assist at the Eucharistic table. And these are things that I'm really looking forward to doing. And I'm hoping to do it in an even deeper role as a priest.
And you'll be doing those things not as a lay person who's appointed to do those out of extraordinary need, but as an expression of the sacramental character you receive in your ordination. Yeah, that you are an ordinary minister of the altar, not extraordinary.
Yeah.
And of the Eucharist as well. So, yeah, it's interesting that the sacrament of holy orders of ordination is the only one of the 7 sacraments that can be received in different ways. Yeah, it's very interesting, and yet that was established by the apostles. And so then within a year, God willing, you will be ordained as a presbyter, as a priest.
Yep.
Yeah. How do you feel right now?
The best way I can sum it up is it's kind of like when you're a kid and you've spent all day at school and you get home from the bus stop and you've got a heavy backpack and you can finally take it off and put it down. It's this relief. It's this sense of, I'm home. And
beautiful.
That's the feeling that's accompanied me today.
Okay, that's why you have that big smile. What would you say have been maybe 1 or 2 challenges studying for priesthood, as well as 1 or 2 particular joys of studying for priesthood?
I think the challenge is that the process of formation really requires tremendous humility. And that's something that I still have to work on.
Oh, all of us. Yeah.
It's you have to be so radically open to formation, which can be painful at times. Because not only are you building on the strength that you have, that's the fun part. You also have to acknowledge, these are my shortcomings, these are my weaknesses, these are things to work on, and that's where it can get really painful. And so I think that's been a tremendous challenge, but one that I've really worked at, and I hope that the fruits of that are going to be apparent in my ministry. But the great joy of the formation process for me is you're part of a community. The other seminarians, we really do help each other out so much at the end of the day. And I've been on the phone and being texted all day, congratulations and prayers of support and all that. And there is that sense of connection to the church, to others, that it's a reminder that this ministry that I'm hoping to undertake, this isn't my ministry. This is the ministry for the church, on behalf of the church. That I'll be representing the church, the bishop in a special way. And what an amazing, awe-inspiring responsibility that is. But the joys that it brings are just innumerable.
Yeah, it's not given to us for our own sake, but for the sake of others. Yeah. What would you say to any man out there who is thinking about the priesthood?
I know that there's a real temptation, and it was definitely the case for me, to hold off, make sure this is what you really, really want. And what was a priest friend of mine kind of explained it to me like, why not try seminary? Where else will you be able to discern quite as well as seminary? If you're out there working at a job all day, and by the time you get home, you're completely tired out of your mind, how much energy can you really give to discernment? So there was a hesitation for me to enter into seminary, because even though this was something that I desired so much, there was a little doubt in the back of my mind, like, is this really where I'm called to be, or is this just something I want? And I could have stayed at that level for the rest of my life. But by taking that leap, by entering into the program, by entering into it wholeheartedly, that has really helped to settle those questions, to see that, this desire that's accompanied me my entire life, God wouldn't have put that there if he didn't want me to satisfy it in some way.
In some way, yeah, excellent. So on this Saturday, 3rd day of October 2020, in about 1 hour, you will receive an impression on your soul that can never be erased. You will be a deacon of God and of his church. And so I congratulate you, Patrick, soon to be deacon, And I hope the people out there will pray for you. By the time they see this, you will be serving as a deacon in preparation for becoming a priest. So God be with you.
Thank you very much, Father.
All right, thank you.